Attention all stations concerned, there will be an update of this edition of the CBS Evening News.
Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Israeli troops and armor today moved deeper into the Christian sector of Beirut. Palestine Liberation Organization leader Yasser Arafat is holed up in the Muslim part of the city, West Beirut. Arafat appears to be trapped there with thousands of his guerrillas because Israel and its Lebanese allies have all of Beirut surrounded. Ike Pappas has our report.
Israeli troops in the friendly eastern suburbs of the city, controlled by the Christian phalangists, mingled with local residents today and awaited orders. But again, southeast of the city, the scene was anything but peaceful. Heavy artillery, mortar, and machine gun fire hammered at suspected PLO gun emplacements in Palestinian refugee camps near the international airport. Israeli commanders on the scene said the firing came from phalangist forces, but Lebanese radio accused the Israelis of the attack. The Israeli military spokesman said Israel had not fired a shot all day and was sticking with its ceasefire. Israeli troops surrounding Beirut had a new problem to deal with today. Israeli Defense Minister Sharon says several hundred PLO guerrillas still on the loose due east of the city have moved close to Israeli lines, intending to stage hit-and-run raids, lay mines, and otherwise harass the Israelis. Sharon told CBS News the move was made with the help of Syrian forces in the area, and he warned that if the attacks were carried out, Israel would consider its ceasefire with Syria over.
We will take act against anyone who will shoot at us, and that is a clear Syrian responsibility to take out these terrorists immediately from this area in order not to suffer themselves as a result of the terrorist activities.
Israel wants the United States to take the lead in finding a permanent solution to Lebanon's security problems. Sharon believes the United States should organize a large multinational force outside the framework of the United Nations to patrol South Lebanon, and that American troops should make up the biggest part of that force. Ike Pappas, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
A high-level PLO official says tonight U.S. Special Envoy Philip Habib is asking PLO guerrillas to stop fighting and asking PLO leaders to surrender. The PLO answer, no to both. Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin spoke today at the United Nations. 94 of the UN's 157 member nations boycotted his speech. Bob Fall reports.
In the first appearance by an Israeli Prime Minister here, Mr. Begin played to an almost empty house. Many delegates walked out or boycotted to protest Israel's invasion of Lebanon, a subject which Begin approached only indirectly when he called self-defense the most sacred right and duty of man.
Pacifism is a beautiful idea, but if it confronts aggressive totalitarianism, it is the greatest provocation, inviting attack, subjugation, and destruction.
Despite demonstrations by PLO sympathizers, Begin kept repeating the political messages he came here to deliver, that the Israeli military action was humanitarian and that Israel won't buckle under to pressure from Washington. At breakfast with Secretary of State Haig, Begin reiterated that Israeli troops will not withdraw until, in his words, the scourge of terrorism has been stamped out. Later, he made it clear that despite all the criticism, he feels he has nothing to apologize for.
That the destroyers will be destroyed and the Jewish state will live forever.
So in just a few days, Mr. Begin has covered a lot of ground, has raised money, warned Washington, and defended Israel. What he has not been able to do is move the political situation in Lebanon off dead center. Bob Fall, CBS News, New York.
After meeting with Begin, Secretary Haig met with the Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko. It was their third meeting in 9 months. What they talked about was not announced. President Reagan's tough line barring U.S. business help for the Soviet gas pipeline to Western Europe today got even tougher. Permission for U.S. firms to sell pipeline equipment to the Soviets still denied. But even more than that, the ban now extends to foreign subsidiaries of American firms. Mr. Reagan's reason? The military crackdown in Poland hasn't eased up. The White House says this ban will delay the pipeline construction by at least a year and make it much more expensive for the Russians to build. Anticipated reactions? Disappointment from American businessmen and anger from the Soviets and Western Europeans.
There was a time when made in America meant something. It meant you made the best. Unfortunately, a lot of Americans don't believe that anymore, and maybe with good reason. But the time has come to restore the confidence of the American car buyer in American technology, American workers, and American cars. It's time we in the auto industry convinced you that you can make a long-term investment in the quality of a new American car and not have to worry about it. So, Chrysler will protect every new American-built Dodge, Chrysler, and Plymouth passenger car 3 ways. 1, 5 years or 50,000 miles on engine and powertrain. 2, 5 years or 50,000 miles rust-through protection on the outside of the car. 3, 5 years or 50,000 miles free scheduled maintenance. We in the car industry must make Made in America mean something again. We owe it to you. So we invite GM and Ford to follow Chrysler. But until they do, if you can find better protection, take it. If you can find a better car, buy it.
For days on end, a few Senate conservatives tried to talk it to death or amend it to their liking. At issue, a new lease on life and new teeth for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The filibuster was broken, and today, as Phil Jones reports, the Senate finally voted 85-8 to extend key provisions of the act by a quarter century and widen their scope.
On the Senate floor today, evidence that times have changed. Gone were the intensity and rancor of 17 years ago when the Voting Rights Act, allowing all Americans the right to vote, was passed. Conservative opponents Helms and East, accused of waging a verbal sit-in, objected to the key provisions allowing for discrimination to be judged on results of election laws instead of intent, and to a 25-year extension of the section requiring several southern states to get approval before changing election laws. A new provision allowing jurisdictions to bail out if they can show a clean voting rights record for the preceding 10 years was not enough to satisfy critics.
For the first time, you have created a so-called protected class of citizens. What is that based upon? Race and color. No other group enjoys that now.
Not so, said the coalition of 85 moderate Republicans and Democrats.
The importance of the legislation is that it is true that there is a trigger, but the trigger is only pulled when there's discrimination. And that is on discrimination on the most basic and fundamental of all rights. And that is the right to vote.
And what we've done here, which is different from previous voting rights bills, is to deal with subtle, insidious kinds of discrimination.
The House has already indicated that it will accept what the Senate has passed. So has President Reagan. Opponents predict that this will cause an upheaval. Others argue that this means that a generation of Americans will be assured of a basic right, the right to vote. Phil Jones, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
It is now in the hands of a jury whether John Hinckley was sane when he shot President Reagan and 3 other people. The defense said he was not sane. The final word before the judge instructed the jury came from the prosecution. The time has come, said the prosecutor, for John Hinckley, for the first time in his life, to take responsibility for what he has done. The jury heard many versions of John Hinckley's mental state, none from John Hinckley directly, since Hinckley did not testify at his trial, but Hinckley has testified, in a way, through more than 100 pages of his writings. Bruce Morton takes a look tonight into the tortured writings of a troubled soul.
I am a prince, John Hinckley wrote, and deserve your goddamn attention. But he called that poem Prince Valium. Mostly, he saw himself as loser. I was attacked for no reason other than my obvious disadvantage. I prefer a society most of all without hate, without people. My mistake is still the same, losing at a loser's game. He wanted to please his parents and defy them. It will be years and years and years before this prodigal settles down to your idea of maturity. He knew there was a work ethic, but he wanted fame. Only in Hollywood does a songwriter have a chance. Why is this so hard for you to understand? He wanted to make them feel guilty. Your son, for the past 2.5 weeks, has had to walk up to strangers and ask them for spare change so I can eat. If you feel being robbed is just what I deserve, I'll try and understand. He made up a girlfriend named Lynn, and in a way, he made up Jodie Foster, too. I love you 6 trillion times. Don't you maybe like me just a little bit? You must admit I'm different. He was sad when Mark Chapman killed John Lennon. In America, heroes are meant to be killed. Guns are neat little things, aren't they? They kill extraordinary people with very little effort. But also, this gun gives me pornographic power. If I wish, the president will fall. Guns are lovable. Guns are fun. Are you lucky enough to own one? He knew something was wrong. Not too many months ago, I fell in a hole, losing my goal to become an everyday person. Hearts are naturally gruesome looking, and no one's is perfectly shaped. Jodie, please watch over me and protect me. Have me do your will in this life of mine. In the end, I cursed myself and suffered. I have become what I wanted to be all along, a psychopathic poet. Inside this mind of mine, I dream of strawberry fields forever. Inside this mind of mine, I commit front-page murder. I think of words that would alter history. I dream of my hand in your hand. This mind of mine doesn't mind much of anything, unless it comes to mind that I'm out of my mind.
John Hinckley failed at poetry, failed at loving, failed at killing. What did he make of all his failing? We don't know. But he wrote a poem for one of the psychiatrists who examined him before the trial. Its last verse reads, "I don't understand it, and maybe you do, but that's okay, because the sun is waiting, and this dangerous movie is finally over. So let's leave the darkness and go find fresh air."
This guy owns a sleek weed-eater trimmer with its top-mounted gas engine. This guy bought another brand with the engine down here. So instead of all the controls and starter at his fingertips, he's got this. Instead of an engine that can't be bumped when cutting close, he's got this. And Weed Eater's engine is up and away from flying grass and dust, not down in them. So when you can have a trimmer that keeps you on top, why stoop to anything else? Weed Eater, on top for a lot of good reasons.
In the next few weeks, people are going to mail you things that look a lot like the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. And that's a shame, because if you enter theirs instead of ours, you'll miss your chance at our super prize, $250,000 in cash, all for one lucky winner like you. So watch your mail for this one, the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. It can make you a $250,000. It's coming soon, and it could change your life. Publishers Clearinghouse, we want to make you a winner.
What's happening now between Argentina and Britain over the Falklands almost defies explanation. But here's a try. Argentina says a state of war still exists, and in a reversal of roles, it says a state of war will continue to exist until all British troops leave the islands. But Argentina did agree to allow its POWs to come home. The British liner Canberra and another ship left Stanley today, heading for an Argentine port. On board, some 5,500 Argentine soldiers. But Britain is keeping hundreds of their officers until Argentina says the war is over. In Buenos Aires, General Galtieri is no longer president. Who is the question. Here's Bob Schieffer.
Galtieri's last parade was washed out by rain, so his hastily arranged retirement ceremony was held in an Army gym. The Army's senior commanders gave him his walking papers yesterday, and today his replacement, his Army Chief, General Cristino Nicolaides, gave him a carved box containing a flag as a going-away present. Galtieri seemed pleased. Nicolaides promised to do his best, but informed sources said he may not last as long as Galtieri, a member of the ruling junta for only 6 months. These sources said Nicolaides, a hardliner known as the Battery, because he is, quote, square and full of acid, has shown little expertise in non-military matters and was a compromise choice selected mainly because it was the quickest way to get rid of Galtieri. After the ceremony, Galtieri got hugs from old friends, but it was a confusing day. Government wire services said Interior Minister Alfredo St. Jean would assume the presidential duties until the junta selected a new president. But St. Jean said he had not been told that. So it was unclear who, if anyone, was running things today. The government upheaval seemed all but forgotten, however, in some quarters where Argentines were watching their team win today in the World Cup soccer matches.
Even so, as Nicolaides, the newest member of the junta, was sworn in tonight in a televised ceremony, sources said Interior Minister St. Jean would be named temporary president as Galtieri formally bowed out. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Buenos Aires.
What you're about to see is the first actual British combat footage of the Falklands War, released tonight by the BBC from the British staging base at Ascension Island. This film was shot on the 26th and 27th of last month. British troops are trying to secure their first beachheads near San Carlos and Ajax Bay on the western side of East Falkland Island. The British frigate Argonaut is on fire after an Argentine air attack. While she burns, a helicopter rushes breathing equipment for the ship's firefighters. Small boats bring other emergency supplies. The Argonaut survived this attack. Argentine warplanes also hit the British commando beachhead at Ajax Bay. At least one plane hit its target, fuel or ammunition supplies. There was a thunderous explosion, and the British commandos suffered casualties. Some of the wounded were evacuated to a waiting British ship, but the British also took some Argentines prisoner. Gagged and blindfolded, these two POWs were taken for questioning to the same British ship. After the British troops secured those positions, they began their move eastward toward Stanley and ultimate victory.
Another gray hair, Mrs. J?
Oh, the gray doesn't bother me.
But constipation does.
And lately, my laxative.
Tried X-Lax yet? Give me your hand. Meet the gentle medicine they call the overnight wonder.
This little pill?
That little pill, orange chocolatey squares. X-Lax restores your system's own natural rhythm for relief in the morning.
My own system does it?
Gently. All we do is help.
X-Lax.
Pills are chocolated. It's the overnight wonder.
No matter which of these stomach remedies you take, for gas, pain, and pressure symptoms, we'll prove Gas X tablets break up painful gas bubbles better and faster. Watch. Intestinal gas bubbles are much like bubbles in beer. Add one of those stomach remedies here, Gas X here. 1 minute later, stomach remedy shows little change, but Gas X breaks the gas bubbles. They're almost gone. For fast relief, get Gas X, the 100% gas reliever.
A tropical disturbance spawned tornadoes and heavy rain in Florida today. A construction crane in Fort Myers was toppled by the winds, and much of the Tampa Bay area this morning sat underwater. Small tornadoes in central Florida destroyed mobile homes, and a 22-month-old boy was killed outside Orlando when rushing water swept him off his tricycle into a city drainage pipe. The Commerce Department today reported that Americans made more money last month and apparently began to live a little better. The department said personal income rose 0.7%, the heftiest increase since November. And the report also said personal spending in May rose an even bigger 1.3%, the most since last August. A grim report about their share of the economy seemed to be in the cards today for almost 400 employees at an Atlantic City hotel casino. But Jane Wallace reports what they learned after their boss called them together.
Those who come here to work, not to play, were betting on bad news. The take is down this year at the Golden Nugget, Atlantic City's most successful casino. For a week, the rumors were running toward pay cuts or layoffs. But when the boss anteed up, those taking the take were taken care of instead. They got this: any car in the lot, stickered about $10,000 apiece, a bonus on wheels for each of the casino's 377 supervisors.
We were all shocked.
We're still pinching each other. This is the most fantastic thing that's ever happened in this town for working people.
Smiles in the car lot replaced the usual skepticism.
I just decided to give my car to my mom.
And what does Mom think? I can't believe it.
Each supervisor will drive away with his piece of the pot next week. And whatever the odds were against the casino car giveaway, you can lay 10 to 1. It's a good bet for the boss.
Oh, absolutely. That's the only reason we did it.
The Golden Nugget takes in $500,000 a day more than it pays out to gamblers. Steve Wynn figures those who take the take will rake in more for the boss if they feel like winners too. Jane Wallace, CBS News, Atlantic City.
A federal judge in Miami ruled today that the way the Reagan administration detained 1,900 Haitian refugees in camps was illegal. The judge said that by law, interested parties should have been notified before the detentions began. Left up in the air by today's ruling is whether the Haitians will actually be freed. Treatment of patients and fees charged by doctors came up today in separate Supreme Court rulings. In one, the justices expanded the rights of the mentally retarded in state hospitals, the right not to be shackled, and the right to receive training wherever medically possible. In the second, the court implied doctors are not immune from antitrust laws. The majority held that Arizona doctors who agreed on maximum fees to be charged had engaged in price fixing. The Food and Drug Administration today approved University of Utah guidelines that could expand by thousands the number of patients eligible to receive the school's artificial hearts. As Linda Douglas reports, that decision opens the door for history's first artificial heart transplant.
Made of aluminum and plastic, this artificial heart may someday prolong life for many, a remarkable mechanical substitute for nature's masterpiece.
From 10 to 50,000 Americans a year could be saved worldwide, as many as 100, 150,000 a year.
Since last year, doctors at the University of Utah have had government approval to implant one of these into a patient whose heart had stopped on the operating table, but no suitable cases have been found. What the Food and Drug Administration has approved now is a much larger category of would-be recipients, those in the final stages of congestive heart failure, a disease which kills 10 to 15,000 people a year. The first implants will be limited to those who are confined to bed, suffering pain and shortness of breath.
And so they're really a sick group of patients that don't have much to look forward to except death.
The Utah doctors have been implanting artificial hearts in calves and sheep for some time with great success. But they've learned from the animals the key problem which will confront human patients. Like this calf, the human will be tethered by 6-foot-long tubes to this big machine which pumps the heart. Movement, life in general, will be severely restricted. Doctors emphasize the first recipients will be part of a human experiment. There is no guarantee it will work.
There may be problems with mechanical failure of equipment. It is not a problem in our animal work, but we can't rule it out.
The gravest consideration that we have is that it might not work at all. It's certainly the greatest ethical dilemma that we have is how do you perform a procedure on somebody that's still alive that may not render them any benefit?
The psychological profile of the recipient is crucial. Someone who has contemplated the uncertainties and has chosen to gamble on life at any cost.
You know, man, when he's faced with decisions, comes up with very unique ways of handling them, and I think this was one of his quest for life.
One who undertook that quest was Florida fire dispatcher Dale Lott. He is in the final stages of terminal heart disease. Lott made an anguished public plea to the Utah doctors to give him the first artificial heart. His desperate crusade may have been a factor in speeding up the final approval process. Because he had other medical problems, Lott didn't qualify for an implant. Nevertheless, he believes he saved lives, although not his own.
Approximately 10,000 people are going to benefit from our fight. We won the battle, but I lost the war.
Linda Douglas, CBS News, Salt Lake City.
There's your refund. But sometimes you need more than a traveler's check refund. You say you also would like us to help cancel your lost credit cards.
Yeah.
And you'd like a temporary ID.
Right.
And you'd like us to cash a personal check for $200?
Oh, exactly.
Really?
If you want the only traveler's check with 5 services to help protect your vacation, American Express is worth asking for by name. We should have asked for American Express.
No home, no matter how clean, is safe from invasion by the common cockroach. And for everyone you can see, there may be hundreds more you can't see. But you do have a weapon, Terminix. Our professionals place a chemical shield of protection throughout your home that kills bugs where they get in, where they hide, where they breed. Terminix. We protect your home against bugs, safely, scientifically.
There is only one noise, said an Ohio woman, a constant roar all the time. And it is spectral music to the ears of Charles Geralt on the road.
The woods of eastern Ohio, sunset and silence. Something weird is happening here. Moonrise. Out of the ground all around us, strange creatures are emerging by the millions. Otherworldly, creeping creatures with unnerving, unblinking, great bulging red eyes. They could come from a distant galaxy. They make no sound until dawn. When the sun comes up, their racket sounds like flying saucers coming in for a landing. That's what some people say. To me, it sounds like catfish frying. All this month, in every daylight hour, everybody in eastern Ohio has had to shout to be heard over the sound of the 17-year locusts. They aren't really locusts, they are cicadas, but they do emerge every 17th year, and in eastern Ohio, this is the year. People who were around to hear the cicada parents make this same deafening sound in 1965 sort of forgot about it. You know how people are, until the offspring showed up this month to remind them. There's not a leaf or twig in this part of the state that doesn't have a cicada on it, caterwauling to attract a mate.
Will you just listen to that? They are not from outer space, but I will say this. As far as this world goes, standing in one place and listening to a couple 100,000 red-eyed bugs all clamoring loudly for love is one of your eerier experiences.
Over in the town of Athens, we found the cicadas drowning out the chatter of children on the street and making the dogs sneeze and irritating people going about their chores. The female cicadas are particularly attracted to power mowers, apparently mistaking them for extremely loud and macho male cicadas. You can imagine how they feel about jackhammers. There is nothing else like this in the whole world of beast or bird or bug. These cicadas slept through the Watts riots and school busing and the worst of the Vietnam War and both Nixon administrations, and missed both Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter, waiting for their day to come. And now, well, I mean, if you hadn't had any love for 17 years, you might climb a tree and buzz and whir and whistle too. The cicadas do very little harm. They'll pretty much die out by the 4th of July, and everybody will forget about them until June 1999, when the offspring of this spring's emergence will emerge and raise their once in 17 years ruckus. Charles Kuralt, CBS News, on the road in Ohio.
And that's the CBS Evening News for this Friday. Dan Rather reporting from New York and hoping you have a good weekend.
Let's end any confusion about new car coverage. They don't stand up to the tough Americans. Introducing Buyer Protection Plan 5, a 5-year, 50,000-mile virtual free ride over the repairs you fear most. 5-year trip interruption protection, 5-year no rest through warranty, loaner car assistance, plus a $500 price reduction on every American Motors Concorde, Spirit, Eagle, and SX4. Buyer Protection Plan 5 plus $500, only from American Motors.
We asked Eleanor Bailey if she thought her denture cleanser could clean away cherry stain.
I would imagine so.
What about a stain of cherry and tea?
I don't think so.
Or a triple stain of cherry, tea, and tobacco?
I would be very skeptical.
Then watch Extra Strength Efferdent go to work on a triple stain of cherry, tea, and tobacco with Efferdent's powerful Blue Action formula.
Efferdent clean the triple stain in between. I'm going home and use Efferdent.
Extra Strength Efferdent removes even stubborn stains between teeth.
Tomorrow on CBS Sports Saturday, fierce punching power and lightning speed in a super bantamweight bout. Plus a grueling 11 races in 11 days. Tomorrow on CBS Sports Saturday.
This is CBS.
Good evening. This is the Western edition of the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Israeli troops and armor today moved deeper into the Christian sector of Beirut. Palestine Liberation Organization leader Yasser Arafat is holed up in the Muslim part of the city, West Beirut. Arafat appears to be trapped there with thousands of his guerrillas because Israel and its Lebanese allies have all of Beirut surrounded. Ike Pappas has our report. Good evening. This is the Western edition of the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting from New York with Terry Drinkwater in Los Angeles. Israeli troops and armor today moved deeper into the Christian sector of Beirut. Palestine Liberation Organization leader Yasser Arafat is holed up in the Muslim part of the city, West Beirut. Arafat appears to be trapped there with thousands of his guerrillas because Israel and its Lebanese allies have all of Beirut surrounded. Ike Pappas has our report.